having a super great day. Happy 4th of July weekend. Hope you're doing well and having fun and laughing because that's important. If you're new here, hello, my name is Audrey. This is my YouTube channel. I am a psychic medium, so please know that up front. I don't want you watching halfway through and then find out about it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe this woman's nuts. Okay, just know that I'm nuts up front, really. That's all I'm saying. So I appreciate you checking out this video today. We're going to talk about Tylee and JJ, the podcast that Adam Cox and Rex Connor are doing. They're doing a 10-episode series called Tylee and JJ's Silver Lining. They're also writing a book. It's written and it should be out in just a few weeks. I have not watched or listened to this episode. This is episode 1. I want to do it with you so you can get my reactions and I can stop the video whenever and put in my 2 cents as a psychic medium or just as a regular person. So let's go ahead and get started. The podcast itself appears to be about 30 minutes, okay? I've only watched the first 30 seconds to make sure I could hear it and everything, but we'll go ahead and start that now. If I can figure out how to do it. There we go. Okay. Actually, I want this one. All right. Here we go.
My sister, Lori Vallow, murdered her children, Tylee and JJ, and buried them in a pet cemetery. And we're all trying to make sense of it. So let's talk about it.
And welcome to our first podcast. And before we even get into it, before we even tell you who we are and what this is about, let me tell you the first silver lining that we want to come out of this.
Yeah.
It's a horrific tragedy, but the first silver lining came to me when I went up to sit through Lori Vallow's trial for 3 days. I took I went with 3 of my daughters. And the first thing I experienced walking into the courtroom was it was very small, and Lori was right there.
Yeah.
First time I'd faced her in five years. More on that another time. But I was so impressed that there were so many people having to put this on. And as I sat there and I noticed a staff of just to run the court, it took seven to 10 people just to run that. Then there's, of course, the defense team and the prosecution team, not only the lawyers sitting up there, but also they had people out in the benches behind them. And then there are the jurors. They had 18 of them, 12 and 6 alternates. It was a lot of people. And the more I sat there, I realized, well, they're also all of the law enforcement people. Oh my goodness, what a tremendous group. I was sitting right behind Detective Ray Hermosillo, and he kind of became the face of the army of law enforcement people that have been involved in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And then I walked outside, and there are so many media people taking this story to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do a few interviews, Nate Eaton and others. And the comments on those interviews were from all over the world. There are millions of people engaged in this story. And as I considered that, I was overcome with gratitude for all these people. And it dawned on me that we are all united. This was a real silver lining to me. These millions of people, we all want the same thing. We all want justice for Tylee and JJ and Charles and Tammy and any other victims. And we don't care what each other's politics are. We don't care what each other's stance on the issues of the day are. And I even had this moment with media several times where I said, think of all the other stories you send out that divide us. This unites us. We all want the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're all together. And so that's my first silver lining, is that we are this is something.
And I think that's really a valuable and insightful thing that Lori's uncle Rex is saying. Kind of like what I say on the YouTube channel here is, we come from all different walks of life. Um, but we leave certain things at the door before we come into the channel, right? And that's kind of what he's saying. We dropped all of our political opinions and other things that divide us as a country and as a people. We leave that at the door so we can come together and get justice for not only Tylee and JJ, but any other victims. And I think that's so telling. And I am getting the chills right now. But let's go ahead and continue.
Something that can unite all of us. And people are so generous with their comments, with their feedback. And we'll take any comments and feedback, won't we, Adam?
We will, for sure. Well, the reason that we're doing this podcast, by the way, my name is Adam Cox. I am Lori Vallow's brother. This is Uncle Rex. And Uncle Rex has been a big part of this since the day one of helping. At least I know he's helped me more than anybody in my family.
Is it just me, you guys? Or I'm freaking out how much Adam looks like Alex. And you can definitely see Rex as a family member too. They all look very, very similar. It kind of freaked me out at first because Alex is dead and Adam and he look very, very, very similar.
Family, as far as all the things that have gone on, and we'll get into everything as we go through this podcast. But we wanted to introduce this podcast. The reason that we're doing this podcast is for the things that Rex just mentioned. There are millions of people that are affected by decisions of a few people, which the ripple effect has gone worldwide. Mm-hmm. And we're all struggling with it. Some of us struggle differently. Some of us struggle more. Some of us have all kinds of ways that they try to deal with what has happened. And I think that's the main reason Rex and I wanted to do this podcast, is to provide some silver linings for all the different things that we're experiencing because of this.
We don't know how to act. We aren't going to suggest to people how they should respond to this. All responses are welcome because we're all on the same team.
Right.
I know a few of the comments from the little media I did would they said things like, well, his demeanor isn't appropriate for talking about this. That's a valid comment. We'll take all comments. I don't know what the right demeanor is. Do you?
No. The thing about, if you've ever been through a tragedy or a family tragedy or whatever it is, I think everybody handles it differently. It doesn't mean you feel different than somebody else because you handle it differently. I know there's people that have never cried. I've talked to several people that have never cried. They said they've never cried in their life. They laugh at things. That's how they get through things. Or some people just do nothing but cry, or some people are just upset, or, whatever the emotions are. We don't know how to, our emotions, how to control them, how to use them. We may cry in this podcast. We may not. We may laugh in this podcast. We may not. We may talk about things that you may not agree with or like, or whatever it is. We're not doing it to do anything but to try to help everybody who has been associated with this particular case, with your emotional state, with all the things that we're all going through.
And in fact, in our family, humor is predominant. And so we do make fun of certain things. And with this tragedy, we have developed kind of a dark sense of humor inside the family. I hope none of it slips out in the podcast, but it might.
Yeah.
So if you see us smiling or hear us smiling or laughing about something that's inappropriate, sorry, because we don't know. We just don't know how to handle this completely. So fair warning on that one.
Yeah. So anyways, we're doing this for a reason. And so hopefully you guys will come along the ride and maybe learn some things you didn't know about this case, or learn some things about some of the people that are involved in this case, things that have happened to us during this case. And bring light to things, and hopefully you'll see silver linings, and maybe you'll find some silver linings that we don't even know or have thought of yet. And we would appreciate any comments or any response or things that you may want to know about this case that we can help you with. This is what we're doing it for.
And we're planning 10 podcasts. We can give them the title for some of them. Adam will do that next, but the rest of them, we want to customize them for the people that are listening and participating. So please give us comments, feedback, and we'll take all feedback. If you don't like the fact that we smirk at the wrong times or chew gum, whatever it is, we'll take it. We'll take all feedback and topics you want to hear from us that might help you.
So just before we get to the 6 different topics that we're going to talk about, I just want to start with Lori Vallow, my sister. She made a huge change in her life, made a bunch of decisions, and consequences have now followed from all of them. Where did this come from? And I hear it from everybody. Was Lori always crazy? Was Lori psycho? Was Lori, how could she do this? Was she a terrible person? All like, there's so many things to get to, and we are going to try to address everything in this podcast. But what I can say is there was a time in Lori's life where she wanted to make a change in her life, and she wanted to be more spiritual. She wanted to be more important, and she wanted to, I guess, get attention as well. There's probably several things that all went into this. And as she was making this transition of doing all these things, trying to predict into the world and reading podcasts and saying that she can, talk to spirits from the other side and all these things, then she ended up meeting Chad, which was, to me, was where he was pouring gas on top of a fire that was already lit and ready to go. And so I call this a perfect storm. Lori ran into what's called a perfect storm. If you've ever seen the movie Perfect Storm with Mark Wahlberg, they're on that ship and the wave flips them over. They hit the perfect storm at the right time. So I think with Lori's case, I think we're going to talk about this perfect storm and why Lori, who she was before and all these things.
And really in 10 podcasts, about a half hour each, we are not going to be able to include everything. This story just has so many twists and turns. And
I say layers to an onion.
Yes.
It just keeps on. You can keep pilling and pilling and pilling.
And so Adam and I are also writing a book, similar title. We don't know the final title yet. Again, we're doing this for input, really, for the book, so we can get people what they want to help them try to make sense of this unspeakable tragedy.
Yeah.
It's tragic for anyone that hears it is offended. It offends our senses and our sensibility. So as we talk about victims, of course, Tylee and JJ are victims. Charles, Tammy are victims, and we want to honor them in the podcast, pay tribute to them. There are other victims that are living that are close to the story, but from our consideration, everybody that is scarred by this, who is darn near everybody that hears about it, it's offensive. It messes with our mind. In that sense, we might consider everyone a victim. We want any healing that we can offer as family members, we want to offer it. So that's why we want everyone's input.
Okay, so let's talk about these 6 different podcasts that we're going to do. The first one is the one today, and this is our intro, basically, / what, Lori?
Let me mention that I said 10. We are planning to do 10. These are the 6 that we have titles to.
Yeah.
And we'll adjust, maybe even these 6 will adjust as we go, but definitely the last 3. And then the final one we intend to put out after Lori's sentencing. Okay, so we have 6 listed.
Yep.
Sorry, wanted to clear.
So we got Lori's change, which we're going to talk about today. Then we got great mom to serial killer. Then the next one will be comedian to assassin. We're talking about my brother Alex, who followed Lori down a rabbit hole. Then we're going to discuss who are Tylee and JJ. And then we're going to do the victim list continues with a lot of people, and we might have some guests on that can clarify some of these things when we talk about them. And then the last one that we have planned is called A Tale of Two Cousins. Both cousins were going down the same direction. One cousin went to the right and one cousin went to the left. We're going to find out why that happened. Okay. So that's our podcast for the coming up in the future.
Yeah, that last one's intriguing. Basically the same gene pool.
Yeah.
Similar path, hearing the same things, going to the same meetings.
Yeah.
Different results.
Yep. And so during our podcast too, we're going to be talking a lot about, decision making, your conscience and things like that, because this is what happened with Lori and with Alex and with a lot of people in this story.
And the silver lining from that's going to be a recurring theme in the podcast. The silver lining from that is we all go through that process, and we all know that we have a light and dark side. We'll talk more about that later, but every time we face a decision is a time to exercise either light or dark, sometimes a combination of the two. It's a complex world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to look at what happened to them and relate it to us. And we hope to do it in a way where it relates.
So they're using the words light and dark, and those are two words we heard a lot from Lori and Chad. Think of it as good choice, bad choice, really. I don't know if these guys are going to go in and start using that terminology like Lori and Chad, how they spoke and churchy stuff. So I'm not sure, but basically they're saying good choice, bad choice.
Relates to everyone, and everyone can decide for themselves, what can I take out of this? What is there about what happened where I can be different? I can make those voices in my head take me the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping people will take silver linings, as you said so well. Everyone's different, so we hope everyone can get out of it what they need, because we hope that what we say is not what's going to teach people, so to speak. We aren't qualified psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
We may have one on the show later, but we aren't
Right.
that. We've never been inside Lori's head. We've never been inside her heart. We can talk about, yeah, she looked like a great mom, and we will talk about that. We don't know what was going on inside or where in her mind the key trigger points were.
Mm-hmm.
But we know we all have that path to follow where we have to figure out life and make decisions.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. Everybody's got to make decisions every day.
And aren't people concerned? Is it true for you also? The question I get asked the most is, how could she be that good and go that dark? I relate that particular question to, how can I do the same thing? Not kill my kids,
Right.
but
Right.
how can I, for the things I do wrong, how can I make that transition? It's not as severe, but don't we all have that battle?
I think everybody does. Everybody has that. And so with Lori, we are going to talk about Lori's change.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I want to talk about with Lori, from my perspective, me watching, being super close to Lori, spending all of our family vacations, we all did it at Lori's house. It was Lori who always wanted to have everybody at her house and plan everything. She always was like that. Always wanted to have a good time, go to Disneyland, take everybody to the beach, all that. I feel like the change started when, and in my opinion, I think everybody needs to have a balance in life. And anytime you go outside of your balance, bad things can happen. And I equate this to this. If you've ever gone to the gym and you see a guy at a gym and he is just rocked, but he's been there for 8 hours and he spends 8 hours in the gym 7 days a week, to me, he's out of balance. Then you go to somebody who will sit on a couch and read a book for 8 hours. No exercise, nothing else. Or play video games for 8 hours. You're out of balance. Next, with Lori's case, Lori went down a spiritual out of balance. She started going not just to church, doing all of her church callings. She went to the temple for 4 to 5 hours a day, every day. She got rid of cable TV so she could be more spiritual. She was spiritually out of balance. And I think in life, we got to have a balance of all three things. And when you go out of balance on all of those or one of them, bad things can happen. And so with Lori going down this her own rabbit hole of being very spiritual, she also started reading a bunch of books about the end of the world. Then she also started feeling like, since she was going to the temple, that she was getting these spiritual experiences and that she could talk to the other side and the other side could talk to her. And so it got to the point where she became, in my opinion, I think Lori became prideful. She wanted people to ask her, hey, what should I do about this? Or who should I talk to about this? You're spiritual. You know the thing. You have things. I think she really wanted that attention of being somebody special, somebody different. And because of her overbalanced on her spiritual side, and people noticed that, not just people in my family, but I think friends and people that she came in contact started being more of like paying attention more to Lori about spiritual things. Because then once Lori would talk to you, everything was about spiritual things, where before we would laugh about movie lines, we would talk about sports, just funny and normal day stuff, became to a one-sided thing where she was just about spiritual. So while she's in that shape, she started reading these books about, the other life. And she started listening to podcasts, Julie Rowe podcasts, started reading Chad Daybell books, all these things. And then she really started to try to push on everybody in the family to start reading books, to start listening to podcasts, to go to these meetings, firesides, or whatever they want to call them, after church or whatever. And so some members of my family went to some of those to learn. And I would never do that because I'm not spending more time at church. 3 hours or 2 hours is plenty for me. I'll keep everything in balance. But some went, and then they said when they went, they didn't hear anything. So during that time, I know a lot of people were like, well, who is going to fall for this? I think during those little meetings that they had, Chad was a speaker, and they had several speakers apparently, that they just talked about, preparing for the end of the world, prepare the people, or whatever. What's the other one?
A voice of warning.
A voice of warning. So there's people that started following these things, and Lori got really involved in all that. Well, as she got involved in that and wanted to be important and wanted attention, I think all three of those things all came into one. There was one time where we were all at her house for a family get together. And I remember we were all standing in the kitchen in the living room, and the kids are playing and TV's on and there's food everywhere. And every group is talking in different groups. And I went to the back and I was standing there, and Lori came up to me. And as everything's going on, Lori was very particular at this point in time of who she talked to and what she said to different people. Who could she trust for what she was about to say? And for some reason, she felt comfortable enough, maybe after a long period of time, and a long period of time of me telling her no. Did you read this book, Adam? No, I did not read that book. Did you listen to this podcast? No, I haven't listened to that podcast. And you could tell every time I disappointed her that I didn't read a book or go or listen to a podcast, I could see that she was frustrated.
Because you two were close.
Yeah, me and Lori were super close. So with all that being said, we're standing in the kitchen, and I think this maybe this was her last draw to try to draw me into what she wanted. And so because I didn't read any books and because I didn't listen to any podcasts, I think she felt that I'm going to just go forward and tell him what's going on. So I was standing there, and she said, I'm transitioning into a celestial spirit, or a
celestial being.
Like I'm making a transition right now to being an immortal being. And I thought that, first of all, in my mind, I'm like, gosh, this is not going where I thought this was going. I don't know anybody who's ever in the process of transforming into a immortal being, because I think we're all mortal. And then she says, yeah, I don't have to eat anymore. And then she said, and if somebody shot a gun at me, the bullet would just go right through me. Nothing would happen. And both of those statements to me were like, where did this come from? First of all, and I didn't even know what to say, so I didn't say anything. And I'm just kind of looking at her, trying to figure out, where is this going? And as I was looking at her, she says to me, you think I'm crazy, don't you? And I was like, Lori, I don't know if you're crazy. I just know what you're telling me right now, I know is not true. And from that point, she kind of just walked away, which in my opinion, I feel like she shot her last shot with me. And so I think from that moment forward, she knew that I wasn't somebody that she was going to try to get to do these things with the rest of the family, like watching videos and all that stuff.
I'll tell another story, a quick Lori story that precedes that. It's not about my interaction with Lori. A little bit of it is, but it supports what you're saying about Lori wanted to feel important, wanted to be spiritual. I think she sincerely wanted to be spiritual.
Me too.
In our family, my mother, who passed away many years ago when I was 18 years old, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
She's just, we don't worship her, but we sure honor her and her spirituality. And that the family story I'll share on here is she got a spiritual prompting of the day she would die. She knew which day. And she didn't go advertising it, but she told a few people. They said, oh, Mom, that's not. And so we didn't know much about that. And she met a man she's going to marry for her second marriage. And she shared it with him. He said, well, I'd rather be married to you for longer than that. Can't we get an extension or something? Yeah. She said, I don't know how this works.
Right.
But she is a very spiritual person is the point of this. And,
yeah.
They prayed about it. They got married. And that day came, I remember it because I was a freshman in college and I got a phone call from her. I won't go into the details here. But anyway, that stuck in my mind because come to find out later, she was preparing. That was the day before she was supposed to die. She didn't die the next day. I didn't know anything about it, so it didn't faze me. She died exactly 1 year later to the day. She was healthy. She was happy, went out for a bike ride, had a cerebral hemorrhage and was dead before she hit the ground. And there are so many stories after that that show that, good heavens, someone, whatever power you feel there is, that power was very active in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was characteristic of her life. Very humble. She wasn't flamboyant about it. But the fact that we revere her in our family, I know Lori, of course, being in the family, being her grandchild, hears those stories. And probably about 10 years ago, I guess, I can't remember the timing, Lori told us in the family, I don't know if you knew about this. She told us, hey, God told me when I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. He told me the day. And we said, okay, well, in our family, we can't really doubt that because we had that experience with my mother.
Right.
And none of us doubted my mother. Lori was very different than my mother.
Right.
But as that came closer, I mentioned it to her a couple of times. She was living in Texas at the time. I was in Texas. And the day of that she was supposed to die, I went over to her house and she was there she was a hairdresser. She was doing my Aunt Gail's hair. I said, Lori, aren't you supposed to die today? Is this the way you want to spend your last day? She said, yeah, helping other people, serving other people. This is the way I want to spend it. Well, she didn't die at the end of that day, by the end of that day, or for many years, still hasn't.
Right.
And according to her, never will.
Right.
Because she's immortal. But that's what she wanted. She wanted to get that same adoration that her grandmother had.
Mm-hmm.
Was my feeling on that one.
I think so. And so with Lori's change, this is about how did she change? Why did she change? And what decisions did she do?
A real quick note. So Lori wanted to be like her grandmother and predict basically the day she was going to die. Grandma got it off just by the year. The date was exact. It was 1 year too early for Lori's grandma. But this reminds me of Meghan Markle and Princess Diana trying so hard to copy somebody they want to be like to the point of ridiculousness. That just occurred to me. Lori acting or trying to act or have similar things as her grandmother did. But let's keep going.
That, had her change. And when it comes to her trying to maybe express herself to us or try to convince other people so she can feel good about herself or so she can feel powerful. I think power has to be involved in this as well. That, this change it was gradual. Like you see some things, like some people say, was it just overnight? She just went crazy? Because you hear that from some people. And I don't know if that's true with anybody or if that could even happen. I always feel that there's like a gradual, constantly building on the same thing as you're focusing on whatever you're focusing on. As you gradually focus on those things, you make steps and decisions going in that direction until I guess you get to the point where you got to make a decision, which apparently she met Chad and she had to make a decision.
Let me combine that insight, with which I agree, of course, with what the prosecution said, their case in the trial.
Okay.
And they said this case is about sex, money, and power. And they laid out their case following that outline, and it was very well done, and I think very accurate. So we aren't talking about Lori just being a spiritual being that turned to the wrong spirit. There were definitely human factors to play. So that perfect storm had a lot of sex, money, and power involved in the decisions that they made.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that we were talking about, as things start going in one direction, is there a way to pull back from that? Was there any point in Lori's life where she could have just been like, all right, look, it's just not going to happen? Because when Lori started predicting the end of the world or when she was going to die or whatever she predicted during these 4 or 5 years that she was making this gradual transformation, anytime you called her out on it, well, no, it's supposed to be next summer or next fall. I never said this. She would try to come back and get out of it or whatever it was. But I as I'm thinking about her transformation and how she changed, I just start thinking about it had to have been an everyday thing. And then she would, because these are all lies, you're telling one lie to protect another lie, to protect another. And the lies ended up just piling up. And then I think that she could forget who she's telling the lies to. So the change in Lori is, well, we're going to talk more about that in the next episode. We're going to talk about, the different things that happen with Lori.
There is so much to talk about, as we try to help people peel this onion.
Yeah.
And we don't have the answers. Let's emphasize that one more time. We aren't the experts. We don't have the answers. We haven't been inside her heart or her mind, but we want to share whatever insights that they feel, meaning our people that listen to this.
Yeah.
We want to know what their questions are so we can address them and help them try to go through the same process we're trying to go through, trying to heal, trying to make sense of it. We want that input not only for the podcast, but to put it in books so other people might reach that.
Yep. Well, we'll see you guys on the next podcast. Make sure you let us know what you want to know about this subject and this deal. We appreciate you guys watching and listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Wow. Okay. So interesting. I wrote down some notes. Like these guys say, there's a lot going on in Lori's head. It sounds like, though, the family basically watched her deteriorate into this killer, really, is what she is. She started reading end of the world books. That's never a good sign. I mean, maybe a fictional novel about end of the world, but see, this is the kind of stuff my dad would probably do, because he's cultish. But the end of the world books, and Rex mentioned, I think it was Rex, mentioned Lori becoming proud. Well, you could see that early on. Lori going on to Wheel of Fortune, Lori competing in the Mrs. Texas or Mrs. America contest and stuff. You could see the attention-seeking part of Lori way before she met Chad. And the guys brought up something interesting, and I think I've touched on this before on my channel, is I'm scared now. I'm scared, not me, I'm just saying. Now I'm scared that I am going to become somebody like Lori. If Lori was normal and she turned into this animal, this devil, does that mean I'm going to do it too? Am I at risk for that? And this may sound really, really silly, okay, but I'm going to say it. Harry Potter had the same fear. He was afraid he was going to turn into Voldemort, that he really should have been in the Slytherin house, that he wasn't truly a Gryffindor or a good and decent person like his parents, because he had the curse of Voldemort. But if you know Harry Potter, you know it's shared to Harry by Dumbledore. I can't believe I'm talking about Harry Potter. That it's a choice. It's a choice. Yes, we may have these bad, dark desires or things that we really want to do, or we've thought about doing, or we had a bad childhood. Maybe you grew up with someone who was a murderer or a bad person. You know, we have the influences of the internet and bad things going on in the world. It doesn't mean you have to let these things attach to you. That is a choice. You have to tell in your mind, through your soul, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be that kind of person. I'm not that kind of person, nor will I ever be that kind of person. And, you know, maybe you need to cleanse yourself. Maybe you spend time with someone who's negative to you in whatever kind of way. And you have to basically cleanse yourself after you have the visit or the phone call with them, or even texting somebody who's poisonous to you. There's a lot of people that are like cancerous personalities and stuff. Their behavior, their verbiage, their outlooks, their opinions kind of wear off onto other people. Don't let that happen. Just don't do it. Don't let it happen. Recognize that this person's poison. Let it go. Let it go. If you need to cleanse yourself with some white sage smoke, then you do that. There's white sage spray on Amazon. Get some spray yourself. Just tell yourself, you don't need any gimmicks. Just say, you know what? Right now I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes, and I'm telling all the negativity to leave me, leave my house. I did not bring any of that negativity with me back into my home from my parents' house or whatever. You apply it to your specific situation. So this is interesting. These men definitely have some inside knowledge about Lori. So let me know if you like this kind of video. I find it fun, especially now that I have this software. I'm so excited to do these kind of videos, you guys. So let me know in the comments if you like this kind of content. There's going to be 10 episodes apparently of this series with these two gentlemen, And again, I do see these two gentlemen as normal human beings, okay? As a psychic, I can look into Rex's eyes, and I can see his personality through his eyes. And this may sound weird, but when I look at Adam, when I look at his hair and one particular side of his face, I get the information I need about him being a safe person too. So there we have it. Words of a psychic on Lori Vallow's family. All right, you guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're getting very close to 1,000 subscribers. Like the video and share the video as well. All right, you guys, I'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye.